No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Hey everyone, this is Chris.
And Lorenzo.
And welcome to our Best of Saturday series. Now that we have hundreds of episodes, we get a lot of listeners asking us where to start.
So we'll be selecting some of our most popular episodes to share each Saturday from our years of podcasting. We hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, I want to talk about a question we got from a listener.
Yay, I love these. These are my favorite ones.
Me too. We get them pretty often. Oftentimes, obviously, they're kind of one-offs. You know, they're questions where we respond back to our listeners directly whenever we can. But the questions are oftentimes very narrow ones where we can't look at thousands or tens of thousands of people going, that relates to me too. But this particular question coming from Matt, we think is one that is could relate to a lot of people out there. And Matt says, "Hey guys, I thoroughly enjoy your podcast. I've been scrolling through your episodes, but I can't find one on dealing with a subordinate who is trying to undermine you by always going above your head to your supervisor. Keep up the good work." And I thought about the first thing I thought was, there's no way we haven't talked about that before. And but you know what? Maybe we have, but I don't know if we've done a full episode on it. And if we have, it's been years. There's no way. It's not recent for sure. But I thought it was a great question because I think there are a lot of people out there dealing with the exact same thing where you have somebody reporting directly to you and they don't, whatever the situation is, they don't like something you say, or they don't like something you've asked them to do, or they don't like one aspect of their job, and they decide that's not, they're not going to have anything of it, but instead of going to you, they go above your head. Has that ever happened to you?
Many times, yes. Many times in my career. I think as you, especially if you work in an organization or with teams where you get promoted within the same team, there are these previous relationships that already exist. There may be peers of yours that applied for the same exact job. And so now, there's this kind of feeling about, well, anything you do right or wrong, they're going to go report. These are all these things that happen in the workplace where the people that now report to you and or work for you have had access or they've had relationships with your direct, supervisor or boss. And when that happens, this tends to happen quite often. And I've had it happen to me as I was a supervisor, as I was an assistant manager, and then even as a leader of leaders, right? It's been a while. But it did happen to me when I took over a team that had direct access to my direct boss for quite a while, a few months or so. So there was these relationships that were established there where that person was the resource, and me coming in as a new leader, I had to navigate those types of relationships. So I've seen it happen quite a few times.
Yeah, I think I like what you said there. You used the word relationships, right? Mm-hmm. And I like relationships, meaning I think they're good. I think the relationships are needed throughout the organization. I think it's a healthy thing when people have a working and kind of trusting relationship with not just their boss, but 1, 2, 3, 4 levels even above their boss. I think that leads to more transparency. I think there's an old saying that when the top can talk to the bottom, it holds the middle accountable. And that works as long as you understand that no matter where you are in an organization, you are the top, the middle, and the bottom in whatever that relationship is, right? Because everybody has a boss and everybody has a direct report. And so if your people can talk to your boss, it does hold you accountable. But that kind of checks and balances system is a healthy and beneficial thing. Where it's not healthy and beneficial is when it's used incorrectly. And so what I mean is a relationship implies that there's communication. It implies that there is transparency in terms of what people are talking about. It's not I don't like what Lorenzo's doing, so I'm going to go talk to his boss and try to throw him under the bus or undermine him, or hopefully try to, gain support from other people on why he's doing something incorrectly and get him thrown out or get him out of there. It implies that you've had the conversation with Lorenzo directly, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. It doesn't seem to be getting you what you need or what you feel is right, and so you have to kind of bring somebody else in it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that there's a lot of, first, I think step in my mind is just a little bit of self-reflection on why do I think this is happening, right?
Sure.
Is this a relationship thing? Is this they don't like the direction that I'm going type of thing? Is this a personal thing? Is this like I said earlier, is this because myself and this person also went for the same job, I happen to get it, and they feel like they should have it. Like really thinking about those things to then appropriately take the next steps to kind of work around and work through it. I think that where it even becomes more complicated is if that person is really good at their job. I think that makes it even harder because, if they're not good at their job and they're going to your boss, to kind of like, cause trouble, like, hey, it's probably a different approach there.
Right.
It's like, hey, but don't throw rocks if you live in a glass house, right? Don't tell
Yes.
me what to do or why you don't like what my job is if you're not doing your job. I think it becomes more complicated when that person is good at their job or better than most, because then as their leader, you have to consider, again, like, am I doing something different here, or am I doing something in a way that may impede them from doing what they can do really, really well? Am I micromanaging this a little too much? Am I asking, like what specifically am I asking, and why are they kind of making that trip, around me? Those are things that I think, would be the first things I would check off the box of considering before I go into any next steps or before I start to have conversations.
Yeah, I could completely agree with that. I think where there's another little element of this, if a person is good at their job, is that your boss, if a person who's good at their job is reporting to me and they're doing this, they're constantly going above my head, it's likely that my boss sees the results of how good that person is at their job. But they don't necessarily see the elements of the undermining. They just see the productivity or the results they're looking for. And that could lead your boss to kind of go the route of, I don't want to rock the boat here. I don't want to stop this good work from happening. So whatever's happening, let's just let it happen. Because it's, at the end of the day, if it's not negatively impacting the boss, then why kind of mess it up a little bit. And that could be a situation where Matt needs to have a conversation with his boss directly and kind of find out what the expectation here is. Because you don't want to shut it down. You don't want to say, stop talking to my boss. You can't do that. That's just going to make it worse. But you can say, hey, if there's something I'm doing wrong here, I want to know. I want to know if I'm doing something wrong so I can do it better. If I'm not meeting my expectations as a leader of leaders, then let me get better at my job. So Matt, I think, first has to have a conversation with his boss directly to say, this is happening a lot. I need to know, am I doing something incorrectly here? Is there something that I need to be doing differently that you think I need to be doing differently? Because if I'm not doing something wrong and I am leading the team well and you have full confidence in me, then I'm wondering why when this person comes to you, the first thing you don't say is, what did Matt say? That's the first thing that should be out of your mouth. Because if this is undermining the team, undermining, Matt's authority or anybody's authority who's in a situation like this, it becomes imperative that the leadership at each level is at least aligned on what the direction is. Because if Matt is asking his subordinate to do something that is, unethical, then that's an issue, and we need to be able to make sure that his subordinate can talk to his boss. But if it's just that 90% of the time the subordinate is doing what they love doing, and 10% they're being asked to do something that is technically part of their job, but they don't love doing, and they just don't want to do it anymore, that's a different conversation. And I think it's one that again, leaders have to be aligned on.
Yeah, and I can share, in my professional career, I've had to have that conversation, and sometimes it's not easy because what I actually had to do was very similar. It was go to my direct boss at the time and say, hey, I need to talk to you about this, right? Because as the new leader of a team, I need them to understand my role, my responsibility, what I'm here for, and I need the opportunity to correct and or provide guidance or even get feedback from my team directly. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yes.
want there to be a relationship that they can come to me and they can give me the feedback directly, and I can work with them on that. If they see you as that option, then it makes it really difficult for me to talk to them and to build and establish this type of relationship and such. So what I actually need you to do is kind of give that some space. What I kind of what you said is like redirect to me, right? Like what I would prefer to do, let them say what they need to say, whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you wouldn't mind, right? If you feel that what they're saying is something that I can handle and that I should be handling, please direct them to me. To have the same conversation. I'm going to go to the team, to the entire team, and let them know that is my role. right? My
Right.
role is to listen to your concerns, to adjust my behavior if necessary, and or to be firm and direct and hold you accountable to the things that are a part of your job, even if you don't like doing them. Like being super duper clear with the team, but telling that, telling that to your boss. And that's kind of what I did. Like, let me tell you why I'm asking you for this, right? I need some space here because I need to establish myself as a leader with this team. I need to understand that I am the person here that's responsible for this, and I want that opportunity. And again, if I'm doing something wrong, I fully expect that you would give me that feedback. I fully expect that you would coach me or let me know that I need to adjust this behavior. But I feel, based on what I see and what I hear, that I'm asking people to do the role and the expectation of their job. And some of them are just not happy with that because maybe they've never been asked to do that before. Maybe because they are a high or a good performer, they've been kind of given some preferential treatment and they've been allowed to not have to do some of these things. And now I'm coming in saying, no, we're going to work as a team. We're going to have clear expectations and we're going to have fair expectations. And the one thing that I'm going to ask is that everybody is responsible for and doing the job that they are paid to do. So like, I think that's a big part of that conversation and dialogue is not just asking for the support, but explaining why, talking about what your strategy is, talking about what communication you're going to give to your team. So that way you can be very much aligned with your boss. Because at the end of the day, what you want is a partnership. You want your boss and you to have the same goals of success for you and for your team. And so there is a part of that where you need your boss to be kind of a temperature check of the work that you're doing. You want exposure from your boss to your people so that they can have a direct relationship and or conversations where they can validate that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing as well, which you brought up earlier. But I think that that's a lot of that context has to be a part of that conversation.
Yeah, so here's my weekly parenting reference here because I think this really applies. And this is, I think in a lot of situations, the boss's boss, Matt's boss, or if you're in a situation where you have a subordinate who's going above your head, a lot of times what can happen is the person who's that 2-level up person, while they aren't necessarily overriding you. So like, somebody says, I don't like what Lorenzo's doing. He's asking me to do this. If your boss is then saying, it's okay, you don't have to do that. That's a very clear cut, like, okay, well, then you talk to your boss. It's like, well, is that not something they're supposed to be doing? No? Okay, well, whose job is it? Let's find out whose job it is. And that's a very, very easy one. Here's where it becomes difficult. It's when the boss knows that it's a part of their job or whatever they're being asked to do, so they don't override you. They don't undermine you directly in terms of telling the person what they can do, but they validate the concerns because they don't want to be the bad guy. They validate them emotionally in the verbiage they use. And here's the parenting reference. So there have been times my mom is a very loving, caring, supportive person. And there are times when I've had to have tough conversations with my kids about something that they did wrong or what they lost. They'll lose their iPad for a weekend because they did something or whatever it is. And when my mom will come over and spend some time with the kids and they'll be depressed or, I lost my iPad for the weekend. And they'll say what happened, and my mom will be like, "Oh, it's okay," and like kind of give them a hug, like, "I'm sorry that happened." And it's the verbiage she uses. She doesn't give the iPad back, obviously, because that would be a different conversation, of course. That she's not allowed to do that. But the way that she validates their feelings on it isn't very clearly relegated to you did something wrong. I'm sorry that you're upset, but this is why this is where we are right now. It's a very vague, almost like a validation of it's okay for you to be upset, that they can then, because of how young they are, interpret it that I did something wrong in terms of taking their iPad away, and that's the exact same thing. If the boss is kind of saying, giving the whole, I'm sorry that Lorenzo's asking you to do this. That's tough, man. I get it. I get it, man. Like, let's hug it out. And then they don't change anything, but they walk away feeling like validated that Lorenzo shouldn't be asking me to do this thing. That's a huge, huge problem. And again, it's one that requires a conversation between Matt and his boss to figure out what those conversations look like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great point because I think that, I think of, and as being a leader of leaders, this does happen from time to time where I have, somebody who wants to tell me about the leader. Right. And of course, like first and foremost, like, okay, tell me what's going on. Okay. Like let me hear and understand. right? First and foremost, 'cause
Sure.
you want to have that relationship, and then you start to ask the questions. Okay, and when you shared with this with them, what was their response?
Well, I'm supposed to share it with them? Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so you haven't had a chance to do that yet. Okay. So here's what I would say is that you should give a leader the opportunity to do the right thing. And if you feel they did something wrong or you feel they made a mistake, they should hear that. Like you're a part of their development, like they're a part of your development, right? Do you want me to go to them and tell them that you told me this and that I should tell them to do something different? Or do you want to build a relationship that's sustainable over time? Now, this is where you utilize me in the future. If you go to that leader and you provide feedback and they're not open to it, they're not listening to you, and they're not willing to have dialogue around their approach, their thought, their reaction, and you can't work it out, and they want nothing to do with hearing from you about a situation and how you feel, that's when you come and get me, because that's unacceptable.
Right.
Right? Like whether or not I think the leader did the right or wrong thing, they should absolutely provide you an opportunity to hear you out. And then they should either react or change their behavior or provide for you more context or perspective on maybe why this happened. And if an apology is necessary, then apology should happen. And same thing, right? Like vice versa. If you approach something with an attitude, or if you, didn't assume that they did it for the right reasons, like these are things that you should own. But at the end of the day, my role as a leader of leaders is to step in when a leader is not providing you the space to express your concerns, and then to have some healthy dialogue and sometimes debate about the situation, right? Like this is a professional work environment. People are adults here. People have responsibilities. People have children. People have mortgages. You should be able to have a conversation with another adult about something that is, that you feel maybe hurts your feelings in a way that allows them to solve it for you.
I completely agree. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 minute hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
The 1 minute hack.
Okay, so for this 1 minute hack, here's what I'd like for you to do. I kind of mentioned this earlier in the episode, but step one is sit down and reflect. Write down why you believe this employee is going around you to your direct boss. Whatever those thoughts are, whatever you assume it to be, it's okay if you're wrong, but start to work through and think through and reflect on why you think this is happening. This may be very helpful as you start to engage in conversations. Step number two is once you've reflected on it and kind of come around why you think this is happening, as Chris mentioned, you must now go to your direct boss and say, hey, I know this is happening and I want to solve this. So I'd like to have some conversation about why this is happening. And I would like to get some coaching or some feedback from you if I am doing something wrong, right? Because that's going to help me grow as a leader. And I want my team to have a great relationship with you that allows me to grow as the person in between. But I also want to make sure that I am able to do my role and work with my team to provide them with leadership and coaching and direction and recognition, and sometimes, disciplinary types of things. Like I need to be able to fulfill that role for my team. So let's have a conversation about this, right? And then upon having that dialogue, step number three is having the conversation with your larger team and maybe the individual directly about establishing your commitment to that team. Right? I think it's important that when you have multiple people on a team that everybody hears the same message. They may hear it differently, and they might be like, I don't even know why Lorenzo is saying this. I don't even know where this is coming from. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you're telling your team, this is the space that I see myself in this role. This is how I want to be a leader for you. And this is what I'm asking of you, is that if I'm doing something wrong, if I make a mistake, if you don't like my direction, please come to me and tell me. Please allow me the opportunity to fix it, to apologize, or to redirect. And also understand that if I'm asking you to do something that's a part of your job, I am expecting you to do that, right? But I am open to talking to you about why you feel you don't have to do that part of your job, or why you feel you don't enjoy that part of your job. I want to build our relationships together. And then you go from there. And then if you need to, if the behavior continues, you then may have to follow up directly with your boss or that individual. But I would definitely say talk to your boss and then talk to the larger team.
Right. I think it's a great one, that hack. And I think, there's nothing can go wrong when it comes to shedding light or transparency on relationships and on kind of organizational structures. And so if the conversation has to happen with all three people in the room at the same time at some point, that's great too. There a lot can happen in terms of like the game of telephone. People can leave a room interpreting what was said very differently than what was actually said. And there's nothing wrong with if it doesn't seem to be working out, just sitting everybody down together and getting on the same page with what the expectation is. Because at the end of the day, if Matt or whoever you are that is having this problem, if this is going to continue the way it is, and your boss is saying, well, it is what it is, they're going to keep coming to me, this is what the expectation is, and I'm going to keep validating them, then at some point you have to decide whether or not this is something a team you want to continue leading, or whether you have to kind of live within this structure and deal with it. And maybe the solution is, hey, you know what? Clearly you don't see me as your boss anymore, so how about you just go to my boss and you let me know what they say, and then you can just kind of work directly with them from now on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.